Your Own Answer podcast, empowering good people like you to amplify your voice, your message, your movement. We believe that when 10,000 uncommon leaders step into high-level platforms, we will transform and heal communities across the planet. It's time to be your own answer. And now your host, Narissa Street.
Hi, how are you? So happy that you are here with us on the podcast that you have subscribed to. You did subscribe. I knew you subscribed. Thank you. And as you know, my name is Narissa Street. I am here to help you amplify your voice so that your mission can be accomplished. So excited to have here today serial entrepreneur, awesome, dope tech maven, Bridget Jones.
Wow, that's a great intro. I'm gonna have you do all of my intros just from here on out.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, really excited that you agreed to do the interview because the people who listen to this pod are really about digging into uncommon women and their stories. So let us know, who are you?
Well, so you already know my name. I am Bridget Jones. I am the founder of Chisel Technologies, which is an American business and software company based out of Washington, D.C. We also have offices in Miami, Austin, and Houston, Texas. And we build software. That's what we like to do. We like to help businesses scale and lower the cost of technical debt.
So how did you get into the work that you're doing right now?
How did I get to this work? Oh, goodness. My story may be a little bit unconventional. So I was actually working in the legal field for about 10 years as a paralegal. And I worked for Miami-Dade County government. And went ahead, I decided I was going to go down the route that I thought was for me. So, I went to law school, and as a frustrated student in law school, I made a decision to drop out so that I can be a part of initiatives that were high impact driven without the barriers of bureaucracy and red tape that sometimes come along with starting projects. So tech was wide open, it made sense, and it was attractive. So that's how I initially got an interest to go into that field. I took a coding boot camp class at Ecotech, and then I went to WinCode, worked the job as a front-end developer with an organization actually there in South Florida called CDG. So we were building web portals and platforms for places like Broward College. After I left that job, I decided to do my own freelance work. 3 years later, here we are.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think, part of everyone's story when they start out in one direction. And then when you make the change that you just made, I think it's really interesting to dig into why the change happened. So what I see is that you started out as a paralegal, but also what I think was interesting is that you also had started off working in government. Like you were an intern with Barbara Jordan, right?
So, wow, you actually found that. So I was in, it's so funny. Yes, I was in Barbara Jordan's program in District 1. Through her internship program, I got a chance to work for Miami Dolphins in the marketing department. So we had like a little bit of experience there. And then I think, after working for the county, I wanted to continue to work for local government after that.
Wow. And then you were saying that there was a little bit of frustration. So I think a lot of us who start out with our idea to do civic work and to be of a benefit to the community, sometimes that's something that happens. And I think what's really interesting is you shifted and not just like went from, okay, I'm going to stay in political science or something with the government. You just like, whoop, tech.
Yep.
What was, so you said tech was wide open. Tell us a little bit more about what you mean by tech was wide open.
Yeah, absolutely. So I loved helping people in communities. Like I've been doing that as far back as I can remember. But when it came to policy changes and shifts, I felt like it just took too long, too many years. And by the time piece of legislation would change, there could easily be hundreds of thousands of millions of people affected by an initiative. And so, what I liked about tech is I could essentially do similar things, affect people's lives. I didn't have to ask anybody for permission. I didn't have to go up any hierarchy. I could simply just do it by speaking directly to people and just providing the services.
Wow. Wow. We have a initiative here that I work with called Be Your Own Answer. And I feel you in that space of not wanting, like, people need you when there's an urgent need. Thinking about like, okay, I got to ask this person, I got to work with this lobbyist, I got to move up 2 chains, I've got to ask it a particular way, because that's the other thing as well. When you're passionate, it's hard sometimes to remember that when you go into certain circles, you got to speak a certain language. So yeah, so how do you feel about like tech? Like, do you feel that same sense of, are there certain languages that you need to speak when you walk there, or was it the field really that wide open? Like you could just go in just as you were?
So there is a language, right? Depending on which route you want to take. So granted, corporate America itself has its own language, regardless of what field that is. Certain keywords that you have to know that you learn along the way. But there are a ton of tech hubs, right? So you don't have to be an engineer to necessarily know how to speak the language, if you will. You can simply just be around other people that are talking a language to pick up on it, like slang, if you will, jargon.
Nice. Okay, I like that. Okay, so I think if you think about it like that, if you think about it as a slang as opposed to a jargon, then there's not a barrier. And I think a lot of people feel a sense of like, well, I don't know what they're saying, or I don't know the terminology, but I like how you twist it and say it's a slang. So okay, so then my question with that, knowing where it is and knowing that you're now in this space where the field is wide open, what are you excited about that you're working on right now?
Gosh, I'm always excited. So navigating through tech was a little challenging, right? So
tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did go to Code, right? So I learned the basics of object-oriented programming languages. But it's a 10-week program, and I've never met anybody in my life that could ever learn how to code in just 10 weeks only, right? So you learn a lot by teaching yourself, Udemy classes, online classes, lynda.com, the library, on-the-job training. And so having to get into the habit of teaching yourself graphic design and software development lifecycle, back-end coding, middle stack development, how to actually run a business, how to actually get a client, inbound marketing. There's just so much there. I learned that there were a lot of pitfalls that I could easily see people falling into.
Like what?
To how this works. For example, so when I first started tech a couple of years ago, I think a lot of people were spouting certain methodologies as more popular, more attractive than others. For example, Agile. And I love Agile for people that have been in this industry for longer than a couple of years. I don't think Agile itself benefits Black and Brown founders. I realize what I'm saying to you. It's a bit jarring, but I absolutely mean that, because Agile is expensive, right? So there's something to be said about talking to marginalized groups of people that don't have an infinite budget about working in a way where they're constantly changing requirements and design functionalities without necessarily schooling them on the implications of what that means to your budget and your bottom line and your timeline. Most people I know work every single day, and they're paying for projects out of pocket or from grandma, or, a 401k somewhere. It's not like this huge funnel of just available funds, right? So when you educate a massive group of people in a particular way of thinking without talking about those implications, I think you're really hurting folks.
Wow. And that's really big, because a lot of people are pushing, that as the next wave of opportunity for low income people. But if you are thinking of, I don't think we see tech. We only see like the unicorns, and we only see just have this great idea, but or just learn this particular new language or this new framework. But to think about the fact that a certain framework is set up to consistently change. And I'm in the education field, and I know that our framework is all about changing every other year, because as you change every other year, someone makes a bag of money on the new framework, right? That everybody has to roll out. So, wow. Woo.
So I challenge, certainly the writers of these methodologies to really think about the social and economic implications of the frameworks that they spout and they push out there. Mm-hmm. Because granted, if you're talking to a group of privileged individuals that don't have to think about money, of course, if you're learning something for the first time, absolutely go with pushing something out, get it out in the market as quickly as possible. But when you think about, SEO costs money, right?
Right.
Front-end design costs money. Back-end design costs money. Field research costs something. MVP is only a first version.
So, okay. Some tech people not listening are listening. MVP, minimum viable product, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're saying is, I want to break it down for some people who want to learn this. So what you're saying is, each step of the process of developing a software, an application, some sort of technology that could be a solution, each step is an expensive step.
Each step is an expensive step. And that's only the cost of development. We have not even considered the cost of marketing, the cost of an attorney. Right? Right.
So these are things that I think people, when they step in and say, I'm going to go into tech, I'm going to start out. And I think about also that we tell our students, tech is the way to go. I think we may also need to think about, what really is the most beneficial place for them to start. Thinking that, and I've had a conversation about this to a lot of my colleagues, thinking that some of them cannot afford to take on something that means that it's just going to be me feeding money into it. Like, I think all the time about internships and how a lot of these internships places are unpaid. And so who can afford to take a summer off?
Right.
To dive into something that, maybe at the end of the work, you'll get offered a job, but you've gone 3 months in the hole.
Right.
So some people can do it, and some people have the nice little cushion or whatever, but a lot of other people, that's why the opportunity is not really an opportunity for them.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to really think about that, and to do a little bit of truth telling. Tell people the truth about that, about what they're getting into. Right. Mm-hmm. I think one of the most valuable things, and for anyone considering tech, and by tech here I mean starting their own project in tech, consider the cost, the real cost, and all of the costs. Learn very basic business models and principles. Right. What I mean by basic models and principles, I'm talking about like financial modeling. Know what churn rate is and what it means. Learn what growth rate is, and how to do those things. I think that marketing is great. Building a brand is important. Mm-hmm. I think that building a product, I'm always going to say it's important, but understanding the general flow of how to start a business is a lot more valuable than the product you create.
Hey, this is a great episode, right? Want to carry the insight from our show wherever you go? Visit myjoyisvaluable.com for the best resources that we've gathered that are inspired by expert guests. Find support for your business, tools to organize your life, and more. That's myjoyisvaluable.com.
Anything
Wait. Slow down. You're just going to gloss over that because you're dropping these gems. Like, wait, we got to make sure we heard that. Say that one more time. Learning about what now?
Yeah, I'm learning, about basic business functions, how to start a business, financial modeling, knowing what churn rate is, which is the rate of loss, knowing how to measure growth in a business. That's really almost more important than the product you create. It really is.
Did you hear that? Let me tell you something. Let me tell you why I'm so excited you said that. So these are some gems. If you're listening online, you're listening in the podcast, you're not seeing my face. I want you to hear my face through my voice. So many of us graduate with these brilliant degrees and we have a lot of theory, lots of theory, right? But business is really about the execution of that theory.
Yes.
In a way that's relevant to the current market.
Yes.
And if you don't have those principles behind you, you can have the most brilliant design. You can have a great building that you want to build. You can have beautiful art, a fantastic movie, whatever it is, great service. You're an amazing doctor. You're a great accountant. If you don't know them business principles, you're going to fail. And it'll be like a horrible failure because like, oh my God, that was such a good doctor. Where'd he go? Oh, I think he went bankrupt. Oh Lord, look at you. See what I said? You see what I said? I said you were dope and you didn't believe me. So.
This was through grit and by doing it and hitting my head a bunch of times, picking myself back up.
What gave you the inspiration to pick yourself back up?
I think a lot of people will talk about like having a why, right? And looking to use like a reason to keep them motivated. My reason is really resentfulness.
Wow. I love that.
It is. It's my real reason and motivation for constantly pushing so much. I'm truly frustrated and angry that I was not taught this in any of the programs I was ever in, right? And it bothered me so much that there are thousands of people that are going to graduate every single year and still not know this, right? Still not know what it takes to start a company. And I'm resentful.
The authenticity of that you're being driven by the anger and also what feels like rage is brilliant to speak on. And I think a lot of people don't understand, like they want to they want to end the anger and not use the anger. Right. And so we kind of get to like this soft, not real peace. Like, oh, we got something. No, but it's still something that needs to be fixed at a root level. So what do we need to do to fix it at a root level? What would you, if you had the idea, if you had the right people in front of you to make it happen, what would we doing?
Yeah, man, there's a ton of solutions, right? The easiest solution is to solve a problem. Like, find a problem, fix it. That's it. Find a series of problems, fix them, step by step, piece by piece. South Florida, in particular, has a ridiculous amount of available funding.
Say that again. Has a ridiculous amount of what?
Available funding. Right?
Available funding. Okay, this is amazing. Okay.
Right, and I know it may not necessarily seem like it, considering like a third of the population below the poverty line, right? Like, where is it, right? Mm-hmm. It lies with your friends, right? So many of them own nonprofits, and those nonprofits have funders, and those same funders They have millions and billions of dollars that they're looking for people to solve problems, right? So for every incubator and accelerator and program that you're a part of, those programs are backed by funders, right? So back in May, we already know with the death of George Floyd, there was this huge shift that took place in this country in a way we have never seen possible. Funders in corporate America decided they felt guilty about the mistreatment that marginalized businesses of color were facing in this country. And so what they did is they opened that funding. And what they decided to do with that funding, they decided to invest specifically in nonprofits. And they expect those nonprofits to be able to trickle down with some Reaganomics and affect the rest of us, feed the rest of us, right?
Why?
Right? So you go back to them nonprofits, to them same incubators, accelerators, ecosystem builders, and say, hey, look, this is my platform. I have an MVP, this and that. I need you to go back and talk to your funders, okay, and tell them to slide some money this way. Because if you don't, and understand this is only Bridget's suggestion, I'm not saying actually do this, right? They get funding based off of you participating in the programs. So if you don't participate in the program, they can't get the funding. They want to continue the funding. They need you. They need to hear your voices. They need your support. You also need capital. So make it work. There's money already there. Get it.
Okay. All right. So here we go. We got an idea. I have a solution. Here I am. I have a solution. I am going to approach that nonprofit that has seen me before.
And granted, there's specific nonprofits like the Beacon Council is one, right? Like the BAC is another.
What's the BAC?
I think it's called the Business Assistance Center.
Okay.
Let me see something. Miami-Dade County, they created a platform called the Millennial Board. There's a couple of them. I know Black Tech Week, well, they're now the Center for Black Innovation is another one. And I'm just telling you, these are some of the people that have received the funding. So where's the funding coming from? It's coming from Bank of America. It's coming from Office Depot. It's coming from major corporations that are concerned right now because they're losing business, right? They're losing business because nobody adequately prepared a business model for a global pandemic like COVID, right? And so in order to retain customers, i.e. you, they're looking for a way to where they can
a social story,
strengthen their relationship with the community.
A social story. Right. Yeah. We teach social story in my field. And how are you engaging the public in you in such a way that they want to give you their money? Yes. So, okay. So let's say that I have an organization that's close by me and I have a solution to a problem. How do I approach them? Because going back to what we talked about language, I have seen people walk into rooms and then come out of the room mad and angry, like, I had a great solution, and they didn't say anything to me. What are they doing wrong when they walk into that room?
Oh, that's easy. All right. Number one thing is confidence. The second thing is a feasibility study, right?
Feasibility, say it again?
A feasibility study, right? Okay. So if you have a solution, regardless of who you're talking to, the first thing they're going to do is not believe you. So you need proof that it works.
Okay.
You need some sort of way to be able to prove that what you say is true is actually true. Feasibility studies can come in the form of case studies, right? It can come in the form of, if you're talking about, hey, it's a solution that people need, you can easily do surveys. SurveyMonkey is an option. I think they charge like $1 a survey. You can always use Google Forms, which is free, to collect as many people and information as you can to be able to prove that. You need some sort of proof that what you say works, people want, or actually works.
Okay. So proof.
Yeah.
So walk in with proof. So confidence and walk in with proof. So like say, hey, this solution works. So where are you? You coming on board, or you just gonna let me solve this problem without you? So this is basically how you're walking in.
Yeah, you walk in with confidence, you walk in with proof, and then you walk in with what you want them to do. Right? So terms. Terms. So depending on what it is that you're looking for, sometimes you need credibility, and sometimes the nonprofit has a lot more credibility than you do.
Right.
Right? So in exchange for this credibility, I will give you access to my platform for free, or free for a period of time, or I can bring X amount of people into your program. You need some sort of bargaining tool. Right? Because you never go, they say like you never ask for the princess's hand without a dowry, right? Which basically means that if you're asking for anything, have something to offer. Everybody has something to offer. It's not always money. Think about what you have of value, whether it's your voice, whether it's your vote, whether it's your influence. Use that as a part of your bargaining communication.
Want to hear more fantastic shows like this one? Visit blackwomenpodcasting.com, the only podcast directory and platform exclusively featuring the voices of Black women across the globe. Listen to experts in business, relationships, spirituality, culture, and more. blackwomenpodcasting.com.
Okay, so just being clear about so again, going back on that confidence, being clear on what you bring to the table, not just in the solution, but what you bring what you bring to the table for the person who's going to invest.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because you threw out a lot of really great gems. And I think that's the other thing as well. I think a lot of people do walk in with the confidence, like I got, next best thing since peanut butter. And you're right. They don't have the backing. They don't have the proof. It's like they haven't quite done the research. It's like, it's just your idea, not necessarily the market's need.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Oh my goodness. So here's a question. What I notice also about the work that you do is you seem to take on projects that are long-term in scope. So thinking also connecting that to investors, right? Connecting that to an investor wanting to be a part of your solution. What should I keep in mind as someone who's going to approach an investor with my solution being long-term? Like, what should I also be able to communicate? If you're looking to take on a project like mine, what should I be able to communicate to you?
Okay. So if you're talking to an investor, the first thing is to try to find an investor that's in alignment with what it is that you're creating, right? Because there's a ton of different types of investors. And most of the time, they display that right on their website. Investment firms will say, okay, I invest in, femtech, for example. So if you're, creating a new solution for paper, that may not necessarily be your person. So I'd say break it down into stages, right? So most investors, at least most of the bigger investors, and I'm thinking more so, your private equity funds, your venture capitalists, are fully aware of big projects, right? So what I mean by stages is most of them will generally know that research and development itself is a stage, right? There are about seven stages of the software development life cycle, right? So the planning stage, where all your research and development lives. The analyzing of the plans is usually where you have a consultant or somebody looking that over just to make sure that that's right. Your design, right? So design is design is like a full stage by itself. There's the product design, there's the business design. You want to make sure that all those things are tested. You got your
Different. Help us on that. I'm gonna write it down, then we're gonna come back, because the fact that product design and business design are two separate things. Really interesting. Do our overview, and then we're gonna come back on that. That's interesting. Please go ahead. So
sure.
Planning, analyzing, design. Then what's next?
Implementing, which in software, that's the coding stage. After you implement, you do testing. That's definitely the next stage. Testing itself, gosh, beta testing, user acceptance testing, like all different types of security testing, right? Deployment, putting it out there on the market. For mobile apps, deployment is putting it into the Google Play or the iOS store, right? Then there's maintenance, which is generally a lot of people would consider the last stage of an MVP release. But maintenance will also help set the tone for future versions and future releases, right? So in thinking about what it is that you're trying to do, it's best to kind of follow a roadmap of where you are at all times. That usually helps. And that's why I say, Agile is really dangerous for non-technical founders that have never done this before. Because if you don't know that there are 7 stages, for example, you jump right to coding without doing research, without analyzing those plans, without running a feasibility study, you have literally fallen into the 70% of all businesses that have to pay for that all over again. So let's say you spend all of your money on coding. You don't have any more money to do it over again.
Wow. Okay. So, and I think that's the thing as well, because when I was looking at, I wrote down as you were talking the 7 steps, thinking about planning, and then the analysis of the plan, right? The fact that that's a discrete step, like that's a separate step, because usually it's plan, implement, right? So like you're saying, plan, analyze, design. Like design, we're thinking design is part of the plan because we have a solution we're putting out there. So plan, analyze the plan so you have a chance to go back and fix, design, and then implement, and then test. Like those are things that I think this is very, very key. Those are things that, as you're saying, a lot of entrepreneurs who are bootstrapping don't have the capacity to do that, because sometimes they're running a business because that's all they've got. Right. So thinking about, I've been doing a lot of work in the community and thinking about people who, for whatever reason, at this point are unemployable. Right. So they can't do the pivot. They just need to get it out there. Tech may not be the place for them to start if they're at that point where I've just got to get something out there because I need to generate some income. Is that a key?
It may not be, so if they say, okay, I just need to get something out there really quickly, right, maybe they could focus on one element and do that really well. Like that element might be sales, but tech is it's huge. It's a huge umbrella that makes sense though, but it makes sense in increments and stages and phases. And this is why we have life cycles.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so let's go back to, because this was very interesting that you were talking about the design of the product and the design of the business, going back to these business principles. I think a lot of times we think that those are the same thing.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they're going to be able to inform each other, right? So in business, and I'm sure you know this, right? Like in business development, you do have to think about things like, what's your revenue model, right? Like, how are you going to make money off of this thing? Like, imagine what would Facebook be if they didn't make money off of advertisement? Would we have ever heard about it? No. Like, how would we have heard about it? Because who's paying for this? Like, who's paying for us to have access to it? Simply because something is free to your end users does not mean that it was free to make.
Right.
It's free to sustain.
Right.
So there's a business model behind each and every single thing that you see. Somebody's making money off of it, and it's important to really understand those different types of business models. There's an author I like. I'm trying to think of the name that he wrote. The name of the 2 books that he wrote. I may have mentioned them. I may have mentioned them in Ryan's boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
There is a book. As a matter of fact,
sure,
I can find it for you.
Sure, no worries. And while you're looking, I think looking at it in that way, thinking about the design of Facebook being easy to use, easy to connect people to, visual, and then the business design is member-based, revenue is driven by ads, having algorithms in place so that people want to return to the feed. So that's the differentiations between business model and product, actually. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I'm trying to think of the name of this book here. I think I might have actually let somebody borrow my book.
That's all right.
But in general, it's just a book about business models.
Okay.
I remember it. Goodness.
Okay, go ahead.
The automated customer.
The automated customer. Okay. So we'll make sure to have a link of that on our site, the automated customer.
It's a really good book about subscription businesses. John Warrillow. Finally, I remember this guy's name. I think it's important, though, to fully understand the way businesses make money before even starting any of this. If you're looking at a giant like Pinterest and say, okay, I want to duplicate that those designs don't look that complicated. They're not, by the way. Goodness, most people will look at that and say, okay, well, all I got to do is convince a whole lot of people to get onto this platform. And, let's say I only charge folks based off of credit card transactions or something like that. They've missed the point, right? Like, Pinterest has over 1,000 employees. What do? Right?
They must be doing design.
Hey, they're doing design, they're doing business development, they're doing contract negotiations, they're talking to sponsors, they're doing everything in their power to make sure that it's free to you to use.
Amazing. So all of those things being the case, I think you've given us a lot to chew on. Seeing yourself in this space of being a someone who's made these really amazing movements in technology. If there was a woman that you knew who wanted to get involved in technology, what would be your advice to her?
I think before I would give advice, I would want to know, like, is she more technical or is she more creative? For me to give advice without asking questions, it's just not wise. That means I don't care about her.
Nice. Okay. I hear you. And I think that's the other thing as well. Like, we think that it's just one avenue, but as you said, the field of tech is wide open. So creative, technical, awesome. Okay, so I think I want to make sure that I've gotten everything here. there's a couple of things that I wanted to discuss, and I'll see if you're up for it, and then we'll wrap. But here is something that I heard you say at the last time that we had a chance to meet with each other, and I said, "Oh, she's got to talk about that."
Okay, sure.
And that was wage theft in tech.
Oh, okay, sure. We can talk about it.
Yes. So I wanted to lead into that from the conversation of where we had gone with, people, Black and brown people, with people who are looking at technology as an opportunity, some way for them to pull themselves up. But you being in the system and having your own company and being able to make some moves, you are really passionate about wage theft. Talk about that for us.
Oh, yeah, sure. So technology is $1 trillion industry by far. Some of the big players here, they've absolutely surpassed that unicorn status years and years ago, right? And we know who they are. We don't have to mention their names. However, there's so much more to their brands than just what you see, right? So, like, for example, like when you walk into an Apple store, when you see the person talking to you about buying an iPhone or a computer, that's not the only employee that they have. There's a ton of people in the background that work for these companies that you can't see, right? And many of them look like me and you, right? So wage theft is essentially where a company can pay a higher amount to their employees and chooses not to. Wage theft is when a company pays so much lower than the cost of living in a city, when there's a ton of economics and stats on that would show if they actually just paid a livable wage, then they wouldn't have such high of a turnover rate. Like these companies, these major companies that come into these cities that spout, treating their employees so well, Jeff Bezos and Amazon, for example, they're doing just a terrible job. They really are, because they certainly have the capacity to do a lot better. And the mindset and the notion is, well, there's always going to be someone that's willing to work at this wage. Because, look, they're fighting against poverty. They know that capitalism, in order for it to survive, requires some people to be in poverty, right? And so they say, well, if I can just give you maybe $1 or $2 more than minimum wage, or $2 or $3 more, then that's enough of an incentive for you to keep coming to work while my pockets continue to become a lot richer. And I just don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate that from companies. These are not small companies. These are not mid-sized companies. These are giants. They're taking advantage of people that are marginalized because they're vulnerable. I don't think that's right.
And what's interesting is a lot of times the people who are working for these companies are also their customers. So, I think that's something to also address, that there is this cycle of you have a certain loyalty to this organization that the organization doesn't have.
That's absolutely right. Many of them don't have unions. Many of the workers don't have a voice at all because there's so many people that's hungry and struggling and starving. They're like, okay, well, you get fired, I can replace you today.
All right. And that in itself, that environment of the competitiveness that's there, and that environment that's there, is detrimental to the community that those organizations, companies are in. So very interesting discussion. So I'm asking a couple other things here. So my question to you is, do you have any parting advice or any parting words? Because your interview was absolutely amazing.
Wow, thank you. So I'd say, like, if you want to go into tech, absolutely do so. If you want to be your own CEO, COO, run your own company, you absolutely have the capacity to do so. Like, imposter syndrome isn't real, right? Like, anybody that spouts imposter syndrome, they're only projecting their own weaknesses and inefficiencies. Anybody can literally walk into this industry and do well, but it does require a certain level of understanding of how this works. Learn the truth for yourself about how it works. Spend some time reading about all the methodologies and use cases and what you can do. Find a niche, go make money. Spend more of your time figuring out how to make money than making a product. When making a product, solve somebody's actual problem, and you'll be just fine.
Whew. I don't have a microphone. I'm going to drop my pen. That was awesome. Your time is so valuable, and I appreciate it. All of our time is valuable, but I understand that there's a lot of things that you're working on. So the fact that you were able to take this time for us is really, really appreciated. Where can we find you? Support your work, buy your products. Tell us all those things, please.
Sure. So you can see my work, my portfolio, on my Dribble site. So Dribble with 3 Bs.com/chisel_lead. You can check out my website at www.chiseltechlab with no S at the end.com. You can find me on Instagram under the same handle, chisel_lead, Facebook. But I'm available. I'm around.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing what's next with you and with all of the work that you do. Thank you.
Thanks, Harrison.
Thank you for listening to the Be Your Own Answer podcast. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Find us at beyourownAnswer.com.